About 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, but there's a small portion of them that consistently win and outperform all the others. Now, these boring businesses, as most would call them, make consistent revenue. They grow year over year and are very profitable when they're done right. And no, you don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars of your own money to acquire them. Now, I'll explain more about that later, but first, what boring businesses are the best options out there right now? Well, let's start with the one that most people overlook, but is extremely smart for beginners, and that is laundromats. Now, why are laundromats one of the best businesses to start with? And it all has to do with the operations. Now, most laundromats are pretty simple in the way that they operate. You have a storefront that has 10, 20, 30 machines, washers and dryers. People come on in and they put their coins in, their dollars in, or most laundromats at this point are equipped with merchant processing, so they're able to go and swipe their card and they're able to wash their clothes. Now, the cool thing about laundromats is that a lot of this is done without the help of anyone working there. Now, many laundromats will have one person who's kind of there in case the machine breaks or just to make sure people are behaving properly and that the machines are going well. But most of the time, you're having one part-time person checking in on the machines, collecting the revenue, and being able to make sure that there are smooth operations. This is not something that has a huge amount of overhead. Now, one of the other great things about laundromats is the way in which you are able to increase revenue. So all the things I just mentioned are typical of a typical, very simple, boring laundromat. And laundromats are all around everywhere, specifically in areas where there's a lot of apartments or very dense population, because in urban areas, most people don't have washers and dryers. And so they have to go and get their clothes done at a laundromat. So there are a couple things in which you can do to make the laundromat even more profitable. Number one is adding vending to that laundromat. Why is this number one? I'm putting it there because it's easy. Vending machines and the model are extremely easy. You get them to come on in, you put a drink machine, you put some snacks machine, you can even put games and consoles and arcade games, things like that inside the laundromat. One, it enhances the experience of all the people that are inside the laundromat, but two, now making just them going there and staying there, it's just more comfortable. They can get a drink, they can get a snack, they can play some games. Also, putting a kids area, I've seen this now recently in laundromats, and it does really well. The more areas that you have for kids to play while their parents are washing their clothes and giving the kids something to do that's not destructive and kind of distracts them. It could be just a little play area, have a little plastic slide, have some games, have some toys, some magnet tiles, things like that. And you have just increased the value of your laundromat dramatically because the retention now for laundromats that have those specific areas is much higher. You get way more recurring customers coming on in. Even if your price might not be the lowest in the area, it is a more enjoyable experience. Now, the vending machines are also going to bring in more revenue as well. Unrelated to a laundromat, I tested out a vending machine at a local hotel here in South Florida, and I put it down there thinking, I would probably make a couple $100 a month. Turns out I was wrong. Turns out I was making double that. I was going down there constantly to fill up the machine, and eventually I sold it because I was literally driving 30 minutes to this hotel multiple times a week, filling up the machine. It was working out too well. And it was just supposed to be a side project just to see how viable it was, and it was very viable. So just by putting it somewhere where you're going to have constant foot traffic, you're going to be bringing in at least a few $100s a month, potentially even up to 4 figures a month from a single vending machine. Another thing that most laundromats don't have, but could be a huge way to increase revenue, is introducing wash and fold. Now, wash and fold is really cool because obviously people are already there doing their laundry, and now you're kind of doing an upsell, saying, hey, we can actually, drop your laundry off, we'll clean it for you so you don't have to stay here, and we'll also fold it for you. And then by the time you come back, it's ready to go, nicely all folded inside of your bag, take it home, and you're good to go. And obviously this is an upsell, which has very high margins. You don't have to have that much labor to do this. Depending on how many people are doing the wash and fold, this could be 1 extra employee, it could be 2 extra employees, but this is something that has very, very high margins because you can make it into a subscription program and you can charge pretty well, because there are some people out there who live in urban areas who are constantly working, don't have time to do the laundry, and this is a great way for them to have clean, fresh clothes and they don't have to sit in a laundromat for 2 hours. That's why laundromats are one of the things that I recommend people who are just getting into acquisitions that they would look at. It's a simple business model. It can be very part-time, and you can scale it up if you really want to take it to the next level. Now, before I tell you about the other boring businesses that have amazing success rates, there's an opportunity for you to learn the whole art of buying boring businesses even faster. Literally anyone can take home an additional 6 figures a year in profit doing this, just like I do. And I explain more about it if you click the top link in the description or scan the QR code which you see on the screen. This next boring business, I would not necessarily call boring because I'm not sure if I could do the work myself, but the numbers do not lie, which makes it a great option. What am I talking about? Funeral homes. Now, why do you think funeral homes are good? Well, it hits the trifecta. For all the businesses I look at, I want it to have recurring revenue, meaning not just that it's subscription based, meaning that if I do the service well and we create the product with high quality, that we're gonna have that person come back at least more than once a year. All right, so trying to get the same customer coming back once a year, more than once a year for the product or service that I sell. That's what I mean by recurring. Then you have the recession resistance. Okay, which means that no matter what happens in the economy, could this service still be needed? Is this service still going to be needed regardless of what happens in the macroeconomic environment? And third is, does it have a moat? Meaning, is there a barrier to entry for someone who wants to get into this particular type of business? Could someone just tomorrow compete against me? All right. So if we look at funeral homes, the answer is yes. Now, on the recurring side, obviously someone can only pass away once, but that family, typically when someone goes and passes away and they use a funeral home, and if the service is good and everything goes well, they're coming back to you with other members of their family. They probably live in that area, and that is now going to be the funeral home for the majority of the people that are in that family. So now, does it hit recession resistance? Absolutely, it does, all right? There's two things you can rely upon in life, and that is death and taxes. And this follows one of those trends. And the third is this something that is easy to just set up tomorrow, or for someone to get into the game and compete against you? And the answer is it's not. A lot of funeral homes are legacy businesses. They've been around for decades, and they've been passed down generation to generation, because most people that are actually in this industry, they see it as a calling. They don't just see it as a cash cow or some way to make money. They do it because they enjoy doing it and serving the families that are going through some of the roughest moments of their life. Now, one of the great things about funeral homes is that the margins are typically very good. We're talking at least over 30%. Now, there's some funeral homes, they're not just monetizing the funeral service, which obviously when everyone thinks of a funeral home, you think of the building, you go on in and you pay for that funeral service. They're also selling the casket, they're selling the flowers, they're selling all the things that are going into the reception after. Well, some funeral homes have those spaces for it. They're also, depending on where they are, they could have access to, they own the land where the person is going to be buried, or they own the cremation services where the person is going to be cremated. So there is not just the front end of here's the home where we're having the service, but there's about 3 to 4 other ways in which that funeral home is bringing in revenue. Now, believe it or not, funeral homes are actually pretty popular. When one comes on the market and selling at a good price, these things can move fast. And so I tell a lot of my students, where if you see a funeral home come on the market and you think it's too expensive, let me know, let some of our other coaches and other people in the community know, because there are definitely a lot of interest in them. But most of these have land that's attached to the business. So the price is going to be higher than the $5 million that most SBA lenders can lend on. But with that, when you have real estate attached to it, there are plenty of other ways to finance these deals. So if you come across one and the numbers seem too high or it's too big of a deal, there are plenty of people that will be willing to partner with you to get one of these deals done. Lastly, one of my personal favorites is one that is going to bring in $2 million in profit for us soon, hopefully. And it cost me $0 to acquire. What am I talking about? Accounting firms. Now, accounting firms are great in a few ways. Now, as you just heard me mention previously with funeral homes, they have a recurring service. Everyone has to get their taxes and bookkeeping done every year. They are recession resistant. Taxes are not going away, sorry to say. And then third, they have a barrier to entry. Anyone just can't be an accountant. You have to go to school, you have to get licensing, you have to have training to do what they do. So it's something that has a barrier to entry. So accounting firms are also great because of the pricing structure in which you can buy them. Accounting firms typically are priced at 1x the previous year's revenue. So while most other small businesses sell between a 2 and 4x of the SDE or the cash flow, the owner benefit, accounting firms are selling based on the previous year's revenue and usually timesing that by 1 or up to 1.2x. Also, as a PSA, accounting firms are getting more popular. A lot of private equity groups are coming down, they're scooping ones up that have just over $1 million in EBITDA, and so the prices are going up. So they used to be 1 to 1.2x the previous year's revenue, and some are selling as high as 1.4 to 1.5x the previous year's revenue. The larger your accounting firm is, the more that you're over $1 million in EBITDA, the higher the multiple it is going to be. Now, one of the reasons I like accounting firms too is they don't play into the typical profit percentages I typically talk about. So most deals that I talk about are between the 15 and 35%, which is kind of the golden ratio. Accounting firms typically are higher in their profitability than most other small businesses, and it's just because of their white collar service. So most accounting firms, they're going to be anywhere between 30% and 50% in profitability. So much more profitable, which means if we go back to the pricing, if you're looking at $1 million accounting firm, that means that it did $1 million in revenue the previous year. But that firm could be doing 400 grand plus in cash flow. Whereas if you were looking at a HVAC company, or if you're looking at a landscaping company that was doing $400,000 in cash flow, then that's selling for at least 1.2 all the way up to 1.6 million. So you're getting a discount on the amount of cash flow you're making when you're going after accounting firms. Ben, you're not an accountant. How did you buy an accounting firm? And the firm that I talked about that we're hopefully selling in the near term for a $2 million profit, all two of my other partners that I have in that deal, none of us are accountants. You don't need to be a CPA to buy an accounting firm. Now, if it is a CPA firm and you want to buy it and you're not a CPA, you can, but you can no longer market it as a CPA firm. That's it. You change the name. So if it has ABC CPA services, now it's just ABC accounting, right? You're taking away the advertisement of the CPA. You can still have CPAs work in the business. You can have still the people working, doing CPA things, but you're no longer a CPA firm. You are just an accounting firm, or you're a financial services firm. So what we did was we bought a CPA firm that had 3 partners. We transitioned them out over the last 2 years. My operating partner was the one who managed that and hired people to replace them. We're no longer a CPA firm. We are now a financial services firm. And after now stabilizing the revenue over the last few years and increasing the EBITDA on this deal, with the multiples now rising in the accounting industry from when we bought it at pretty much 1.1x to now where we're getting offers at 1.5x in the span of 3 years. That is the power of multiple arbitrage. Now, obviously we benefited from accounting firms becoming more popular and prices rising. That is something that we could not have forced ourselves. But we knew that this was a strong industry. We knew that there was a lot of consolidation going on by private equity. And we went into this with the knowledge that there was a good chance that this thing was going to appreciate faster than just what our cash flow is doing. And that's exactly what happened. And so the last thing I will say about this accounting firm, as I mentioned before, is that I did this with 2 other partners. One of those partners brought the capital to the deal. One of those partners was the operator, and I was the partner who kind of put it together. And that's what I came in. I had the experience and I brought that to this partnership, being able to get everything going to make this deal happen. All of us worked on it together, but each of us had a role to play. And because of that, I put in 0 of my own money. Now, on the $2 million payout that hopefully will happen sometime this year when we sell this business, all 3 of us as partners will be splitting that payout. Now, all the businesses I just mentioned, whether it starts with the accounting firm or the funeral home or the laundromat, all of these deals can be done with little to 0 down. Now, I just mentioned how I did the accounting firm deal by bringing a partnership together, getting the deal all together, making it happen. I was able to walk away without putting any money into the deal. But there are other ways in which you can structure deals to where you have very little into it. For the funeral home deal, as well as the laundromat, you can structure those deals just traditionally, using SBA financing and structuring your seller note in a specific way where you can get to less than 5% down on that deal. And that's without bringing in any investors. That's without really doing any that much of creative financing. You're just taking the seller note, you make sure that it's more than 10% of the purchase price, you're putting on a full standby for at least the life of the loan, and most lenders are going to qualify that as 5% towards your equity injection. So the 10% that you are supposed to be bringing to the deal, they'll shave off 5%, and now you'll be left with 5% that you need to put up. You can put minimal money down for the asset you're buying. We're talking buying a 7-figure asset for $50,000 or less, without bringing on any investors. Now, if you bring on investors, great, you can get that down to 0. But even if you didn't, for $50,000 controlling $1 million asset, that's now paying you over 6 figures a year in cash flow. And by doing certain things, you can increase that multiple arbitrage, exit in a few years, and have an amazing exit for your investment. That is the power of the SBA 7(a) loan program. That's the power of business acquisitions, and that's the power of multiple arbitrage. Now, I appreciate you sticking with me throughout the entire video talking about these 3 businesses. Make sure to put in the comments below any other businesses that you guys think kind of fall into the categories that I'm talking about: recession resistance, recurring revenue, a barrier to entry, have a moat around them. I would love to know if there's any other ideas out there that I'm not thinking of, and I'm sure you guys watching it probably will think of a few. So put that down in the comments below. Other than that, hope you all have a great day. See you on the next video.